What does redemption look like for you? If you were to think back over the course of your lifetime and consider all the events that have happened, or at least all the major events that have happened, I wonder how you would interpret the data, so to speak. You're looking back at all that's happened. What conclusions do you come to when you look back at your circumstances around your birth, who your family is, your parents or your caregivers, your schooling, relationships, your opportunities, things that you wished you had done, your regrets, your dreams fulfilled? When you look back at it all, what conclusions do you come to? Are you sad? Are you thankful? Are you bitter like Naomi? How do you interpret the data of your life? Now, as we reach the end of our story together, a cursory telling of this narrative would be, this is the ultimate and they all lived happily ever after story. That would be how you could read it. But to do that, as we've discussed before, kids are booting the ball against our window. Oh, hold on, it's our youth. It's fine. But to do that would be to empty the story of all its power. Because you could say, well, here's the story. Ruth was a lady in a bad spot. She was poor and starving, but then she met this guy called Boaz who was wealthy. They fell in love, they got married, and then they ended up having a child who ended up being the father of King David. Big deal, right? This is the story of Ruth, and if you do that, it's like a sacrilegious thing to do. Because there is so much more to the story. Because in doing that, in getting to the nub of that story, you have cut out a whole load of human beings and a whole load of mess and a whole load of things that don't quite fit just right. Oh, we don't need to worry about Elimelech. He was the husband of Naomi, father of 2 sons, who faced a very real situation where he had a family and they experienced famine. And as a father, he knows that he needs to provide for his family. He's got this very difficult choice. What do I do? Do I stay in Bethlehem or do we go and try and look something? We don't need to worry about that guy and all that he experienced. We don't need to worry about Marlon and Kilion. These are just guys with weird names that all we know about them is they got married and then they died. We don't need to worry about them. Well, what were their expectations? What were their hopes? What were their dreams? How did they feel when their father died? Were they excited when they got to marry Ruth and Orpah? Or maybe they were nervous. They didn't want to marry Moabites. Or what about Orpah, a lady that you barely hear anything about, who married Kilion? Did she want to marry him? Was she forced into marrying? What went on there behind those scenes? When you cut the story down to, and they all lived happily ever after, you ignore all of this very real human situation, all of the hopes, all of the dreams, all of the fears. And the biggest downer in this story, if you like, is Naomi. So we'd cut Naomi out because she changes her name to Bitter. She was so down that she said that God has done this to me. And now I don't call me Naomi because that means sweet. Call me Bitter because my life is now bitter. I thought you were raising your hand. So I was like, yes. My life is bitter. Sorry, ADHD head. I'm back in the room. Forgive me. Oh, am I? Where am I? No, I'm not. I'm gone. I'm bitter, sweet. Naomi has changed her life to bitter. So we don't want her in this story because she kind of brings the whole thing down. We don't want that because that doesn't fit well. We don't want to do that. This is what we see in our passage today. And this is why we can never read the story as a happily ever after story, because it is anything but simple. When human beings and their lives are involved, there's always complexity. There's always complexity. And as Boaz looks to round out the story and to take Ruth to be his wife, we work the story through. There's one last wrinkle that we need to deal with. He's not the first in line to redeem the family, to redeem Elimelech's family. And really, don't forget that at this time, the women are part of the property. So Elimelech is the first kinsman redeemer wants to redeem the property, but he doesn't really want the stuff that comes along with it, because that's going to be difficult. So there's a complication in the plan. So now, out of the mercy of God, because of who he is, he gave laws to the children of Israel by which they were to live and to follow him, his ways. And in doing so, they were to demonstrate to the world around them what it's like to live when God is king. That was the whole point of Israel, of being under a theocracy. We don't need a king. God is our king, and his perfect righteousness and justice and the peace and prosperity that comes when he is king meant that Israel was to be a light to the nations, to show them this is how it was always meant to be. And one of the ways that God demonstrates his care, his fatherly compassion and love, is in the laws around redemption. It was never meant to be possible for a Jewish or anyone from the tribes to fall into poverty to come outside of the blessing. There was always a way for them to be redeemed. And there was an obligation on the family, whatever tribe you were in, it would be a shameful thing to allow someone to fall destitute and to be left proverbially by the roadside, rather than to have someone come and redeem them, as they buy the land back. You get a good deal on the price, but ultimately you're taking care of them. Maybe they'd come to work for you. Maybe they would become a part of your household and they would be protected and taken in. That's who God is. He's a redeemer, and he doesn't leave us hanging out here. He comes in and he brings us in. This was the law that was they're talking about when they're talking about this kinsman redeemer. Now, I never have any time for people that say, oh, God's laws are barbaric. God's laws are repressive. To come to that conclusion is to be very ignorant of the circumstances and the situations into which God interjects his law. God comes in an ancient time when it is literally kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, you're weak, you're slowing me down, you're done. And he says, no, this is not how it is in the kingdom. He lifts people up, he brings people in. This is always who God has been. So anytime we're reading the scriptures and we come to the conclusion that that means we must leave people on the outside, we're reading it wrong. Because God is someone that always brings people back into the family. And we can't use scripture to justify injustice, to abuse and to keep people down, because that's not the heart of God, and that's never what you see in the way when he gave the law. So anyway, back to the story. So Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, but there's one before him, this guy. We don't actually ever find out his name. Boaz is a dude. He's a dude, you know what I mean? You don't know what I mean. Okay, sorry, wrong room. Boaz knows what he's doing. He is a smart man. He's a businessman. You know, his business is food, and his business is thriving. He's got people that work for him in fields, and he has employed plenty of people. Boaz has seen a time of famine. God, there's tons of you. Where do you all come from? They've been through a time of famine, and yet here he is. The famine is gone. The business is booming again. He's stayed the course. He's been faithful in a hard time, in a hard season. And now business is booming. There's bread back in the house of bread. That's what Bethlehem means. And he knows what he's doing. And he says, okay, this is the plan. We read, Amy was sharing with us last week about how he planned to do it. But he recognizes the fact that he needs to address this one situation. And so he meets the man at the town gate. He organizes a very clever plan. Because he's a smart guy, he knows he needs to have a conversation. But he has the conversation in such a way that he engineers the situation to his advantage, right? Hey, kinsman redeemer, you know Naomi's selling that parcel of land. Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. You're going to buy it? Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm going to buy it. He's like, oh, cool. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, good. Oh, by the way, you know Naomi, who changed her name to Bitter? She comes with it. and Ruth the Moabite. So is that cool too? Oh, whoa, hold on a minute. My wife might have something to say. I've already got one mother-in-law. I'm not sure I'm ready for another one. You know, whatever the reasoning may be. But he frames it in such a way so that the man's like, this is not such a great plan. And because he's gathered the elders around the gate with him, this is a one-time shop. So he's like, okay, we've had this conversation. You all heard that, right? We're in agreement. He doesn't want to buy the land. He doesn't want to mess his family up. Well, there could be many reasons why he didn't. But ultimately, the main reason is because he didn't want the responsibility of the women. He wanted the land, but he didn't want to take the women that came. And redemption takes all. This is a problem. It's not redemption if it doesn't take everything in. And that's not the heart of God, and that is not how that law was ever meant to be exploited. Whether he thought he was just going to get away with it because he knew Naomi and Ruth were there, I don't know. But ultimately, Boaz sets up a situation whereby he can have a legally binding contract. They take their Vans flip-flops off, hand them to each other. Weird. I don't know why they do that. Something to do with like stepping out the land or something. I could probably have a conversation with you about that. But ultimately, it's just an old-fashioned thing that they do. And there you go. The family is redeemed. But redemption isn't a simple business transaction. Redemption takes people's lives and the complexities of those lives. It doesn't take the good and dump the messier stuff, as the first kinsman redeemer wanted. I'll take the land, that's nice, but I'm not sure about those two. Redemption takes everything, all of it. It does not ignore the messy and unvarnished parts of your story. It embraces them. And Boaz's redemption of Elimelech's household includes the Moabite Ruth, the embittered Naomi. And from that place comes a child, Obed, which means, as we've said, names are important in Ruth. Obed means servant of God. Elimelech, Obed's kind of grandson, by the way, meant my God is king. He didn't act like his God was king. But Obed is born, this hope that is born into this story. This is a servant of God. And what do the people say to Naomi? It's a weird moment in the story. They say, look, Naomi has a child. Does she? No. Ruth had the child. No, Naomi had the child. Because redemption in the kingdom of God always works back up the line of history, as well as down and forward. In the book of Joel, chapter 2, God says to his people that he will restore to them the years that the locusts have eaten. And C.S. Lewis said in his book, The Great Divorce, you cannot, in your present state, understand eternity. This is what mortals misunderstand. They say of some temporal suffering, no future bliss can make up for it. Not knowing that heaven, once attained, will work backwards and turn even that agony into glory. So the way of redemption meets you in the present moment. It unfurls itself into your future, but it also reaches back into your history. So that your place of pain and hurt and heartbreak now becomes your place of strength and healing and blessing. That's what redemption means. God takes hold and he turns it for our good and for his glory. So we've seen Ruth and Naomi's redemption story. It's utterly beautiful. And I wonder, what is your redemption story? What's your redemption story? My redemption story is I was born to a mum and dad that loved me. I grew up in a home that was very poor, with a brother and a sister. My dad worked hard. We didn't have any money. You can forget about presents. It was maybe we could get some school shoes this month if we're careful. My family was very loud. It was a noisy environment, quite dysfunctional. So I would withdraw at any opportunity that I could. I loved my friends, wanted to be with my friends all the time, but at the moment I'm in the home, I just want to withdraw. I just want to be silent. As I grew up, after a couple of chance encounters with some material at a young age, when the internet comes to my house, because of my hatred of intimacy and isolation, I end up stuck in a cycle of addiction to pornography. And then I grow, I'm craving intimacy, but I can't allow myself to be intimate, so I can't do relationships. I don't know how this goes because I can't let you in because of shame. And so I'm now stuck out here, desperately trying to get the intimacy without allowing the walls to come down so that I can go in. I would pursue girls, and the moment that I thought that I wanted a relationship, but the moment they showed me any sense of wanting to go there, I'm like, whoa, no way. Okay, I'm on to the next one. I couldn't let anyone in close because of shame. Shame about my family, my upbringing, my addictions, my struggles, all of that. Got married at 23 to someone who brought with her a lot of complex baggage as well, to add it into the mix. And the two of us got together, and it was a completely unstable, codependent nightmare. And into that environment comes my first son. And so I find myself at age 25 holding my son, who's, as a baby does, making noise and crying. And I'm crying. And I'm saying, God, I'm holding a baby. I'm being asked to raise a kid. But I don't know. I'm a kid. I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm a kid and I'm being asked to raise a kid. I can't do this. We had no money, horrible living situation, ended up divorcing at age 27, something like that. Ended up divorcing, age 27, separating, ultimately divorcing. And if I'm honest, in that moment, my overwhelming feeling was, oh, thank God. It was relief. I'm out. This is good. Yes, there was pain. Yes, there was heartbreak. Yes, it hurt. I missed my son. And that added to the story of shame that I was telling myself. But actually, I couldn't see God anywhere in that. Like the story of Ruth, right? You don't see God anywhere in the story of, he's everywhere. He's working behind the scenes completely. I'd begun working on my stuff with some help of some Christian professionals. Started to engage with the root of that shame and that dysfunction and addiction. And one day Deborah walks into St. Albans Vineyard Church. The lights came on. Beautiful thing. No, weirdly though, she got in. Where is she? Is she here? I don't know if she's here. She's somewhere. But she's hiding. She's like, oh God, he's talking about me. She's on the stage talking about an Alpha course, I think. I didn't know who she was. And then next thing I know, she's sharing about this Alpha course, this beautiful woman, and I can remember exactly what she's wearing. And she goes, oh yeah, and Henry Cross is speaking now. It's like, she knows my name. This is insane. This is a sign from God. It's going to be all right. She knows my name. Praise the Lord. And at the rest, they say, is history. Now, like the story of Ruth, I could condense that down into happily ever after. The problem with that is that would diminish all the other parts of the story. And there's a huge assumption in that, which is that everything now forevermore is going to go up and to the right. And if life has taught me anything, that's a bad assumption to make. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be valleys and troughs. Like the story of Ruth, redemption is a complete thing, and it's an ongoing thing. The story of Ruth doesn't end with the genealogy that we read at the end. The story of Ruth continues through, I don't know how hard it was for them to conceive a child. Maybe they had other children. Maybe they lost children. Maybe they had rows and they thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Maybe they had arguments. Maybe they had another famine. Maybe they struggled. We don't know. But I tell you what, it wasn't, and they all lived happily ever after. Because redemption comes in, and it keeps coming in. And all of the bad and all of the difficult, it just keeps encompassing and engulfing and bringing in again and again, all to the glory of God, if we will allow it. And that's the fundamental point. Are we going to put the walls up and say, I can't let anyone into that, that's too painful? Or are we going to bring the walls down and say, actually, man, I need someone to know me. I need someone to know what goes on in here, because there's some dark stuff, messed up stuff in here. And I need someone to know that. And I need that someone to not just go, oh my gosh, you are messed up, and run a mile and then tell everyone about it. I need to share that with someone who says, me too. I hear you. I get that. That's why the 12-step program is so incredible, because it's all a bunch of people gathering around the fact that they can't do it on themselves. They need a higher power that is going to aid them and to help them and to bring them in and together. God is in the business of redemption. It's what he does. So what's your redemption story? What is your redemption story? Do you have one? Do you need one? What are the broken and shameful and hidden parts of your life that are trying to turn you bitter, but if you would allow God in, he could change your story and the story of others around you, because you say, God, I'm in. All of this stuff, I don't understand it. It's difficult, it's painful, but I think you could do something incredible with it if I would just let you. Think of the family, think of the people around you that could be drawn in if you would just let the walls down and let the Lord come in. So when I started this talk, I asked you to interpret the data of your life and see what conclusions you come to. Are you grateful? Are you bitter? Where are you at on that arc of redemption? Whatever your conclusions, redemption means however bleak your story, it's not over. There are still pages left to write, both in this life and on into eternity. Now, this church, we got in trouble calling this church the Rock+Redeemer Vineyard Church, believe it or not. Those in power of Vineyard were like, oh, you can't do that. It's meant to be the Dunstable Vineyard or something. But we found a loophole. We went with it. Why did we call it the Rock+Redeemer Vineyard? Because this is who God is. He is the solid rock that we build our life on, that we know no matter what happens, that he can be trusted and he will be faithful. He's that solid foundation. He's not going to give way when the weight gets too heavy. He is strong enough for us to build our lives on. And he is our Redeemer. He's the one who meets us exactly where we are. No matter how much the pain, no matter how much the heartbreak, no matter how much that I can't see my way out of this, he comes to where you are and he says, we're going, let's go. And he brings you on that journey of redemption. If you would allow him in, he will change your story. And he will continue to change your story. And he will continue to bring you out of that. Some of the most shameful things in my story have been incredible opportunities to come alongside other people that walk along that stuff and that can't see a way out and don't want to tell anyone. I say, hey man, I hear you, I see you, I've been there, let's go. It's an incredible thing the way God uses our stuff if we will allow him to do that. He is our Redeemer, the one who completely embraces us and secures our future, and also reaches back into our past and our history. And he takes all of those things that could make us bitter, that could make us just say stuck in our bitterness, say, call me Mara. That's what Naomi said, call me Mara, because God has dealt harshly with me and my life is now bitter. And redemption goes back and he puts a baby in her lap. Look, Naomi has a baby, Obed. He takes the things that would be bitter and he turns them into the sweetest of wines. It's what he did for Ruth. Her redemption story reached all the way back to Moab. And it comes all the way forward to King David, and all the way forward more still to the King of Kings, Jesus. Think about that. Jesus' ancestor was a Moabite. That should tell you something. Jesus, his ancestor, was a Moabite. That's someone that was a pagan, an outsider, that was not part of the house of Israel. And yet God did not despise that. God redeemed that for beautiful glory, to say even the outsiders are going to be part of the work of salvation. That's how complete redemption is. It tells me that God is not afraid of our messes and our mistakes. The opposite is true. He has no problem taking the parts of our life that we would rather hide away and turning them into glorious chapters in his redemption story. This is the God we love. This is the God we worship. And this is the God we get to tell people about when we testify about what he has done, is doing, and will continue to do in our lives. As the song says, it is no secret what God can do. What he's done for others, he can do it for you.